welcome everyone to another edition of the Cryptid Consortium Podcast. It's going to be episode 3, season 1.
Oh, yeah.
I got Nick and Gary with me. Nick, what's going on? Gary?
Hey, Jay. Hey, Gary. Guys.
Nick, you want to tell us what's happening tonight?
Tonight is the MIBs.
Yeah, this is
notorious Men in Black. And I'm going to tell you, all my partners here have told me the same thing as, we all knew about this before. We've researched it before, but we did a super deep dive. And everybody says this is a rabbit hole that just continues. Yeah. We could actually do this MIBs for 5, 6, 7 shows if we really wanted to. Yeah. This is one deep subject, and there's no one answer. But we found a lot of good information for you guys, and let's start it off.
Who wants to go? Disclaimer out first.
Go ahead.
For everybody. Most everybody knows that I am a disabled veteran, and everybody knows me. You guys know, we discussed it before the show, that I am a certain level of military clearance. So this is one episode that y'all aren't going to hear me talk a whole lot, because I have to be very careful. Me and Jeremiah actually got into this in the past with the whole scandal and everything. So I'm going to let these guys talk and just back up what they say and bring some stuff in from.
Well, it's the same here with me.
Yeah,
I still have it.
Yeah,
I still have that, and it didn't run out yet, so I don't know when.
But the big thing, the difference with you and me, though, is my livelihood is under
you're
control
connected.
of the Department of the Defense.
You're connected still.
You said too much. We're yanking your money.
Actually, you're going to hear, MIBs.
Yeah,
and which brings me to MIBs, these Men in Black.
Yep.
I'll start it off by saying this: back in the 1940s, MIBs started to appear. And what they were United States Air Force officers in uniform.
Yeah.
Now, there was a reason for them. Okay. There was a reason for these guys. They were actually a division of the United States Air Force called the Office of Special Investigations. Okay. So the OSI. What they would do if they found out that you took a picture of something in the sky was they would come to your house, and they would very politely, very nicely, non-threatening, ask to see those pictures. There's a reason for this, and I agree with them 1,000,000%, okay? And why do I agree with them? Because other countries have no business knowing what our defenses are like.
Absolutely.
Okay, we were working on certain types of airplanes. At the time, we were working on anti-aircraft at the time, stuff that was beyond the 1940s, actually, stuff that was more like for the 1960s, but we never came out with it because still in the developmental stage. So if you, by chance, somebody, back then people used to, look up to authority. They didn't question as much as nowadays. But if you by chance did question it and say, I don't really want to show you my pictures, they would say, okay, well, thank you. We'll be in touch. That's about as far as they would go. Now, I have this from my research, and these are quotes from people who later on, actually the very next day, got their doorbell rung or, knock at the door, and there would be anywhere from 2 to 3 men dressed in black suits, dark hats of the day, because they used to wear hats during the day, but they were black, white shirt, impeccably, done, and a thin black tie. If it was cold out, they would have black overcoats. Okay, well, just think about it. That was the dress of the day. But actually, that's what the United States Air Force told these gentlemen to wear. They would come to the house and they would be a little bit more forceful and insist that they see those pictures and tell them which these days we say it's a matter of national security. They explained that to them. If they still didn't want to give them the pictures to look at, okay, sometimes they did take pictures, these people, of secret projects that we had at the time. And we would take their negatives and their pictures and find out if they gave it to anybody else or the newspaper. But once these MIBs went there, they would take everything. In fact, they would go through the house and check everything they could. And they would tell the people that, You give it to us or your life is going to change. You're going to have a very, very hard time.
Absolutely.
Things are going to start to happen to you. So they would passively, I don't know if you would call it a passive, but they would passively threaten the people. Mind you, this is back in the 1940s, 1943 and the like. Just something to get into real quick, though, is 200 years before that, these MIBs were actually around in Europe because people would see, and we have nothing to do with, aircraft back then 200 years ago, but people would see things flying in the sky. Now, Jeremiah, this is where the rabbit hole comes in that we were talking about.
Yeah.
200 years ago, come on, no jets, no planes, no nothing. No. But the people would see things flying around in the sky and they would talk amongst themselves in the villages and in the cities. And people would hear, oh, wait a minute, Mr. Johansson said this and this. Let's go talk to him. What would happen is they actually had a name for these people, but I'm not going to say it on the air because it's kind of offensive. And I have to not do that because I don't want YouTube to throw us off. But anyway, they call these people a certain name and they had black capes and they were very dark looking and they would come and talk to these people to find out what they knew. And they would warn them. They would warn them that things would happen to them if they talked about it. This was 200 years previous to 1943. Okay, what I'm trying to get at is they kind of related these people to the supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like these people in the dark capes were actually looked upon as devils, as demons. And they had all kinds of, I guess we can get into that in another show, the supernatural aspect of it. But they did throw a supernatural aspect to it. Let's go forward to the 1940s now. Say you still didn't give it to them, things would happen to you and you would disappear. That's what the research that I found. And I have this book over here. I've got about 17 pages full of notes.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've read most of them and, most of the notes and I can just give it to you by rote. But the Office of Special Investigations is a division of the United States Air Force. And they did go around and try to find out what secrets we took pictures of, the people that saw these things in the sky. And it's still going on to today.
Absolutely.
So
here, I think you hit a good point, Nick, with national security. If they're taking pictures, especially with the way people do with UFO, hey, let's post it on the internet. What if we have a test? We're testing a top secret drone or an airplane, and you've got pictures of that. And what's funny is in the little research that I've done on this, I've done some in the past and now. Most of the time, if you give them the pictures and it's not nothing, they just give it back to you.
They don't care.
I've had it personally happen with me taking pictures around a certain ranch in Utah, and they came up and took the cards out of our
SD cards.
Yeah. And when we said, when are we going to get those back? They said, you're not. And me being the person I wasn't going to push the subject. But one quick thing, doing the research, you was talking about 200 years ago, 1863 in Fort Laramie, Wyoming, just about 10 miles outside of it, they had a big snowstorm, and it's pretty well documented. It was in a couple of books and in the natural history, but the commander of the post lived like 4 miles off post, and there was a big snowstorm, and they had a knock on the door, and it was so, how it gets in Wyoming, it'll black out and you can't
forget about it.
You can't move. And he had a knock on his door at like 9-10 o'clock at night, or that sometime after dark, and opened up the door, and a man wearing a long dark style, they call them a half coat or half trench, I guess,
right,
comes down below the knees, and a black like cavalry hat, asked him if everything was okay, and he said, yeah, we're not going anywhere. And the guy was like, okay, I just wanted to check on you and make sure. And the guy had a pale face with very thin cut mustache and a nice little black tie, and he said he could not hardly see his eyes was real dark. And the guy just said, okay, and turned around and walked in. You know, it's a whiteout. He walked into the snow, and I'm trying to think of the commander's name. But anyways, he ran out to get him and says, hey, why don't you stay here because it's unsafe? And he said he followed him within 2 to 3 seconds. And when he going out there, footprints, everything disappeared.
Gone.
Out of nowhere. That was my first official, you know, in history of hearing of the Men in Black until Nick mentioned, you know, 200 years ago. And that's over 100 years ago.
And I'm talking about in Europe. That's where this was. This
Yeah.
was in Europe, not here in the United States even. So, I mean, they've been spoken about over the years, over the centuries and everything. But it's really strange that they had it over in Europe. And like I said, they acquainted them with something demonic going on. But
I know you're going to get into it in the future, but what's your personal, you know, you being a government man like I am, what is your, do you think that let's rephrase that. Do you think that the modern ones are alien or extra, however you want to put it, or demonic, or do you think they're government?
You know, I'm not going to avoid the question, but I have to give a full answer. My personal opinion is that it's meds, you know, half and half. I think sometimes it's government, and we didn't get into this other part though.
We're going to.
The Men in Black, we're going to do it right now.
Yeah.
MIBs later on, as we'll see, as we tell stories about what happened to certain people, some of these MIBs are actually fake government agents who are actually, what they're saying is they're agents, you know, they're government agents of suppression. They're alien beings in human disguise. Let's put it that way, because we have a few people out there. I think Jeremiah probably has the names of the people that were visited, but a few times people have, well, not a few times, many times, there's a split, guys. There's a split out there. The alien MIBs, not the human ones now, they're either a very light green colored skin on their face or a pasty white. And in a few occasions, people have noticed that their eyes are slits. The mouth is just a line. And in one occasion, this one MIB, see, sometimes they come in threes, then they come in twos. Most of the time, my research said twos. But there was one guy in particular at nighttime, his doorbell rang, and you know, he was visited by one. And when this one MIB sat down, he noticed a few things. The man had gloves on, and he wiped across his mouth with his glove, and it was lipstick because it spread across his cheek, and it showed that he only had a slit. He didn't have a mouth. So that was fake lips that he put on there. That was one thing he noticed. Then another thing he noticed was that American phrases, you know, slang that we use.
Yeah.
He noticed that he didn't know what he was talking about. And the guy would talk about something way different. Yeah. Why don't you expand on that, Jay? I mean, that you've heard.
Even what I found is even trying to hold up a normal conversation that you and I would have, they have no idea what you're trying to
standard linguistics.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, very weird looking faces, like you said, Nick. They move. I found some people have seen them as moving very strangely when they walk.
Like robots, right?
Yeah.
Like almost like robots. Yeah. Which brings us to another freaking rabbit hole. Pardon my language.
I've heard the reptilian eyes and forked tongues, and some had vampire type teeth. And, you know, in my situation, I take that with a grain of salt. But the one that really got me, that when we was doing the research, Jeremiah, I mean, you did a couple of shows on this, was the Men in Black, that was the husky kind of pro-military cut, real gruff, you know, the good cop, bad cop thing. And then the other smaller gentleman with dark hair. What was funny is those two individuals covered a period of, 25 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Over that they were showing up with people, and they wasn't aging. And it was always the thin guy was always the real polite, and like Nick was saying, he would ask the questions, could we see your information or your photos and whatever, and then the big military type guy. But I've always wondered with that is how much of this, and I'm going to throw us a little bit farther down the rabbit hole, but I wonder how much of the alien side of it or the demonic side of it and the government side of it intertwines.
I think it's correlated.
What you just said, though, that they went through a period of about 25 years. With the research, I've read tons and tons on this internet, on books, but I also went to look at videos of Men in Black.
Yeah.
And it shows, like the History Channel, they had this group of guys go out with the History Channel. They interviewed people that had encounters with Men in Black who actually came after them. One of them was a famous country singer in Utah.
Yep.
Then there was another guy 1,000 miles away. I believe he wanted to keep, total anonymity. And then there was another gentleman south of them, about 900 miles away. Now, what I'm trying to get at is the History Channel investigators brought with them a crime scene investigator artist.
Mm-hmm.
And the description, and it was eerie, guys. It was eerie. The pictures that he drew all 3 times, and they all agreed, the witnesses agreed, that's what they look like. And son of a gun, if it didn't look like the same man.
Yeah.
And this was over a period of 20 years, that separated them. The same man, short haircut, same lips, the same nose pattern. The eyes were identical in all the descriptions, identical that he drew. So this is an artist that drew it from their descriptions, and he was tack on all 3 times. So something's going on. In this case, the guy didn't age. Gary, you're right. The guy didn't age at all.
No.
Yeah, and neither one of them did, right, Gary?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the big thing with me. But and just like Nick was saying, I didn't get to see that actual documentary, but in doing the studyings that I did, that it was uncanny how many people, and folks, this was prior to the internet. This was right. In the 90s, all the way back in the 80s and the 70s. So there was no overlap. There was no communication. Now, being the skeptic, not the skeptic, but the inquisitive that I am now, anybody can read, and you can listen to enough of these podcasts and make up a story that sounds great. Yeah. But back then they wasn't doing that because nobody was writing books about, Men in Black, even the paranormal community did not become popular until about 10 or 15 years ago.
Oh, with the movie.
Yeah.
When the movie came out.
Exactly.
It was not a mainstream thing. But another thing too, and I know, Nick, this is going to get you into, I'm kind of directing folks. This is 100% extemporaneous. We have not talked about this together.
Yeah.
Used to, it was all UFOs and aliens, but now it has spread out to cryptids. To dogmen, to all kinds of stuff. And I have to wonder sometimes. I will never say that there's never no Men in Black, because working in the position that I was in the military overseas, I seen a lot of stuff. I'm not saying that I seen Men in Black, but I seen people wearing black that worked for shady groups of the government because we had to work with them. But what I'm saying is, I will never say that they're not there. What I'm saying is, why were they there? What is their principle? And that's where Nicky was saying a while ago that got me is, it's like a different motivation. You have some that's more government orientated, and then you have some that are just almost downright evil, almost like a shadow man appearance.
Yes, that came up.
Well, we'll get into that when we put up that, not yet, but a security clearance organizational chart.
Yeah. When you showed me that, I was like, wow.
We'll get into that soon. But something you mentioned, Gary, and guys, jump in at any time that you want. Part of my research, like you said, Men in Black with cryptids. Okay, let's throw a name out there that anybody in the cryptid community with any sort of background knowledge will know. Here's a lady, and God rest her soul, she passed away recently. Linda Godfrey.
Yep.
She's the one. She's a former newspaper person. And she also wrote many books. She's the one that came out with the Beast of Bray Road in a book, and she wrote all about this stuff. Now, during her research, she would go to other towns, and I was reading her book on it, and it says not to mention towns or anything like that. I can mention her name, but she was there with an assistant in a certain town in the mid-central west area of the United States. She was investigating something in this town, population of about 20,000 people, and a black SUV pulls up next to her. She's about to get into her vehicle with the gentleman that she was going around investigating it with, the cryptids. It was a dogman investigation. And the window on this blacked out SUV comes down right near her. And the man said, "Miss Godfrey, we'd like to speak to you for a second." And she went over there and they questioned her. And she's got this written in her book, questioned her about what she saw, any pictures she had, what did she talk about to the witnesses about, and everything. They'd like to see her notes. They took her notebook. They took pictures of it. She could see. They took cell phone out, took pictures of them, handed back the notebook, and said to her, "Thank you very much." And they disappeared. And that was the end of that. That's one instance where a cryptid investigator, Linda Godfrey, an author, was approached. Gary?
I was just going to say that a lot of people will disagree with me, and I really don't care. But I had the grand opportunity of sitting down with her across a table for about about 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And this is not the kind of woman that presented herself. And I'm just saying this, and I'm apologize now if I offend people, but you have a certain sect of personalities that gets big in the cryptid community. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's not a negative thing. It's not a positive thing. It's just certain personalities get big in the community because of the attributes of that personality frame. Right. She was not. She was a very quiet and very articulate.
Very true. Yeah.
And I just personable, interviewing her and talking to her. I wouldn't call it interview. We was just talking. And because that was when it really got my attention about Dogman, I just flat out asked her. I said, "Do you believe in Dogman?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "What do you believe that they are?" She goes, "I don't tell you. I'm not going to tell you, and I don't know." I said, "Well, have you seen one?" She goes, "I've seen a few." She was not, it was also, even though she wrote her books and stuff, but you would have to draw the information out of her. She was not flamboyant about it. You see what I'm saying? And that impressed me. So I would take a statement coming from her about Men in Black, I'd take it to the bank. Now, you get a lot of other researchers around here that are on the other extreme of that personality that I'm talking about, that we got raided by Men in Black in our camp. And I'm like, sure thing, is probably the game wardens, buddy. And you just didn't want to, they do it for attention, but certain people don't. And she was one of them. And that's one of the things that impressed me about her, but the lady's research. Another one that, discusses somewhat of Men in Black. And I know a lot of people doesn't like him and stuff like that, but when I talked to him, he was very articulate, was David Paulides. Very thorough in his research. And he talks about Men in Black. And in a position that he's in, there's got to be something to it, folks. That's all I'm going to say. There would not be these kind of people talking about these kind of things if there wasn't something to it.
Well, Gary, in all honesty, I think you'd agree with me, and tell me if you don't. Still to this day, we are going to have people from the government, depending on what division. If somebody is talking enough about it and they're putting pictures out about it, they're going to want to talk to them and find out what's going on and maybe speak to them, in the matter of national security.
Absolutely.
It's only common sense. I personally don't want the Red Chinese to see our plans on the F-35. I don't even want them to see the new modifications that we made to our new Warthog. I don't want them to see anything we have. It's our country. It's none of their business. It's our security. So I totally 100% agree with them. I don't agree with, if what happened to some of these people was not an accident, in the past, how they died and what happened and whatnot. Like Forrestal, he was on a committee called the Majestic 12. He was the Secretary of State way back when. And the Majestic 12 consisted of military men, the president, not the vice president, 5 scientists, and a couple other politicians who were high up there. And Forrestal was one of them. And the Majestic 12 dictated policy, in reference to UFOs and the science that we have that came from those UFOs.
Absolutely.
In quotes, okay? Forrestal decided that enough was enough. People should know things. And he took sick mysteriously. They took him to a hospital. He was on the 16th floor, and mysteriously he fell out of the window on the 16th floor. And that's kind of mysterious, don't you think?
Yeah.
He's the Secretary of State and all that stuff. And
especially when he was literally sick enough that he was incumbent. He could not get around that easy.
Yeah, I mean, oops.
Yeah.
And most hospitals have windows that cannot be opened.
Yep.
So I don't know, maybe back then they didn't have those precautions, but it's funny how he, passed away. And it's okay. Well, I'll leave that question open to our audience out there. Okay, guys.
I think you brought up a real good point. And this is probably where I've known Nick and Jeremiah for years, but this is probably, I got to say, like Nick does, disagree with me if you want, but especially with Nick, because we've literally got a lot of the same history with the government. But I have a hard time. I honestly think that a lot of the Men in Black stories are exactly what you said. Government agents coming to glean information or to shut down a chance for a security breach. And I honestly think that a lot of this woohoo is people making up stories to get attention. I thought, until we started doing this research and talking to Miss Linda Godfrey, talking to people like Nick, listening to David Paulides and some of the stories. Some of this is, and that's the reason I asked the question earlier, and I have to ask it again. Nick has done a lot more research on this because he's a research machine over the years. Where does it, we know it intertwines somewhere.
Absolutely.
We have to find that. But how do we distinguish, I guess, in between the government side of it and the paranormal side of it? But for the simple fact, I would be more apt to go after the paranormal side than I would the government side. But go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. I said, right. But how you would distinguish would be, what a normal human interaction is.
Yeah.
Correct.
Jay was describing some of the stuff where the person would suddenly act like a robot.
Or even an AI or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't even get into the photography anomalies.
Exactly.
Right.
And the
But I mean,
anomalies.
while these MIBs were talking to people, and that's what we're trying to do is to bring out knowledge to people, because a lot of people, if they're shown a badge and, flick a badge and then put it back in, they're going to be, oh my God, yeah, let me cooperate. But if it's a regular human, they're going to be smooth in their speech and they're going to be able to interact with you. These alien MIBs, like I said, the alien beings in human disguise, they would suddenly run out of energy. Jay, did you find that also in your research?
Yes.
They would run out of energy, and some of them even said to the human people that they were interrogating, actually, my energy level is low. I have to leave. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And, they would leave and stumble out of the house. That is not a normal human reaction.
No.
And another thing is, at first they would act, they would ask you questions and they would be just straight up. And then they would get a little bit more aggressive and ask you where the pictures are and whatnot. And it's just not normal human interaction. A United States Air Force officer is generally pretty well educated.
Well,
if not from his military service, he knows how to speak to people.
Well, not only that, just to get to that position, and you literally hit what I was just fixing to mention, is that coming from an Air Force officer, that's creditable.
Right.
Absolutely.
Joe Bob Brown from back Methuselah, Tennessee, that got probed by an alien 6 weeks ago. Oh, now I got Men in Black coming around. I don't look at those as, I mean, I still listen to them, don't take me wrong, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't look at those as creditable. I mean, they are. But when you have scientific people and government officials and law enforcement officials, there's been local law enforcements have Men in Black come up to them and say, all right, fellas, we'll take care of this. And
Right.
I told you about my buddy in, where I lived for a couple of years beforehand. I'm not going to get into detail about it, but
Yeah.
I believe I told you about this. He caught one going across the road on his dash cam. He's a deputy sheriff. When I lived at a state. He had people show up at the station the next day, told him he valued his career and valued his well-being, he would forget about the whole situation.
Well, a very famous Men in Black.
And the camera footage disappeared.
A very famous Whitechapel, New York. The whole Bigfoot cryptid thing.
Right.
Where all the game rangers and all that stuff come in, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. A lot of people don't understand it. The local sheriff said there was a certain pair of Men in Black. It wasn't Whitehall or Whitechapel. I can't remember.
Whitehall.
Whitehall, where the alien, the UFO, and then that came down and was pushing on the back of the car. But that was one of the most famous. And here's the thing too. It's got to be pretty serious. MUFON does not do cryptid very much, but they went there. That there's just, like you said, there's so many intertwining facts, and it goes down this rabbit hole. It's just, where do you go and where do you not go?
Yeah, it's like it says, part of the research I got, it says not all in this organization are believed to be human, but some are. But like you said, Gary, where do they come together?
Yeah,
now,
you know what I mean?
Now, going into like people that I guess our audience members might know, at least the people in the ufology community over there. In 1952, a man named Albert K. Bender, he was a former United States Air Force airman. Okay, he was in the Air Force. He got out, and in 52, he started the IFSB, which is the International Flying Saucer Bureau. That was an organization, a big organization, similar to the one I run, which is the International Dogman Project, which, we're all over the world, mostly in the United States, but we're also all over the world. His International Flying Saucer Bureau put out a newsletter 4 times a year. I think it costs like $1.20 to get the 4 issues. And these issues were chock full of reports of seeing flying saucers, the descriptions, the places, the addresses. I mean, I was shocked. He would give addresses like John Doe, 15 Blue Street, Kentucky, Illinois, 08892. He'd give him a telephone number and everything. Wow. In the newsletter, guys. Now, you could buy the newsletter separately, but instead of, getting it for the cheaper price of a full year, you'd pay something like 39 cents a copy. Big whoop, right?
Yeah.
But it was an organization with an organizational chart. He was the leader of it. So that's Albert K. Bender. And he really got into this. He got into this to the point where his room was full of star maps and, all kinds of reports on the walls, on his desk, books after books of it. He had people in New Zealand, in Australia, as main members. He told his people to go out there and talk to others to join. And the organization was growing and growing. Unfortunately for him, I guess back in, mind you, this was 1952. In 1953, he got a visit by 3 Men in Black. I want to get that out there, though. It was 3, not 2, not 1. It was 3. And they were dressed in the typical MIB uniforms of black suits, white tie, white shirt, black tie, and black hat, and pasty white faces. And they spoke to him about this, and they told him in no uncertain terms, didn't say anything threatening, but told him that things would change for him and that he needed, this is something else they told him. They told him about who his family members were, what he did before, like he was in the Air Force. They told him about the things he saw, the different UFOs that he saw, where he saw them, when he saw them. He didn't even put some of this stuff out yet. He was so taken back by this. They told him, that's it. Stop. No more. Stop the newsletter. Don't do this anymore. Well, he soon afterwards closed down the International Flying Saucer Bureau without any sort of explanation to the members. He just closed it down. I guess about a year after that, he put out to all his members, and he told them, if you're going to do this, be really careful when you're out there and who you speak to. Albert K. Bender then just went into like seclusion. Any writing he did just didn't seem like his normal. The guy had he was very well written. His flow was flawless, but anything he wrote after that visit, it sounded like gibberish, like nonsense. And the poor man just, I guess he passed away in despair because he didn't do it anymore. That was the end of that for him. And he was only one person out there that was visited by MIBs and told, that's it, no more, stop or things were going to happen.
Yeah.
So, that passive threat, guys.
Yeah. And, Nick, you mentioned something interesting also that I found. These people that get these visits, they haven't even released what they found for information yet. And these individuals, these men in black, or whatever we want to call them, already know.
Yeah. That's what spooked him. That's what spooked him so much.
It is, and it's spooky. It is spooky.
The other one where Gary was talking about the different guys, the same guy over 25-year period. Well, there was this, like I think I mentioned before, there was this singer in Utah, and he was visited by the MIBs, and they told him everything he saw. He just stayed there, and he was told about what he saw, where, when, and how. And they told him, that's it. No more. You don't keep talking about it. We realize you're famous, so people are going to take you for your word. And this guy underwent, the singer, by the way, he underwent a polygraph and voice stress analysis. And it turns out that he was telling the truth in both times. So something's going on. He came out, years and years later and gave his story to the History Channel.
Yeah.
They investigated, they spoke to him, face to face about it. But
well, they even went as far to hint around about, we can even kill your career if we need.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that is the one commonality of all of it, even from the government aspect of it to the paranormal aspect of it.
Yep.
Is they're always squelching this thing down. And I can understand it. I mean, if we wanted to go there, if there was alien interaction with the government, they would dang sure wouldn't want anybody to know about it. Now, everybody knows I'm not big into UFOs. I mean, I used to work for a guy, Dave Scott, with Spaced Out Radio, is real big into UFOs, and go talk to him about that. But here's the deal. When it comes down to it, what would happen? I do understand that the Vatican, 2 years ago, acknowledged UFOs and are slowly bringing this out. But what would happen if all of a sudden a spaceship showed up at the White House? Like the whole Independence Day thing. This world would go into chaos.
Absolutely. But if a UFO was floating around there near the White House, before it even got near, their defenses on the roof would kick in, and you'd be having rockets being flooded. Yeah. Because I know that for a fact that you're not allowed to fly over airspace unless you're, allowed to, specific permission to go over that airspace. Like, we can't even go from Virginia into DC airspace without having permission. And nobody wants to do that because suddenly you've got a rocket flying at you at 8,000 miles per hour and you're not going to avoid it. So Anybody guess what the big one that really brought out MIBs is? I'll give you a hint. It's July 1947.
Yeah.
Roswell, New Mexico,
Yep.
right? That's where the saucer crash happened.
Yep.
And they actually did pick up pieces, and then they went and tried to pass it off as a weather balloon.
Yeah.
Now it's funny because the people in New Mexico around Roswell have seen these weather balloons like hundreds of times. They know what a weather balloon is. But what they did was the Air Force sent their people out there and they picked up all this scrap and they sent it to, I believe it was Indiana, and to a fort in Indiana. That's where they were going to research this. And what they did was they came up with a story, and that poor guy that brought all the material down, the Air Force guy, I don't want to say his name because he was wrung through the coals enough as it is back then, and his poor family, I think they made a fool out of him because he was told, you're going to sit there and you're going to show them this. And what it was a polyethylene and aluminum air balloon that was chopped up, one of those weather balloons that they put up there. And everybody knew that this wasn't it. This wasn't it.
It wasn't alien. It was from China.
Yeah.
And didn't they transport a lot of that stuff to Edwards Air Force Base too?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. It made a couple of trips actually.
Yeah.
And I believe one of the trips, the airplane was going, and it was a 4-prop transport plane, and it got destroyed, or so they say.
So they say
it crashed and got destroyed. And like I said, so they say.
So they say.
So there's something else to it. I mean, they want to make the evidence disappear, and they're BSing about it, saying, oh, it got burnt up. Well, how's it going to burn up when it went through the atmosphere? And it should burn up if it doesn't make contact with our atmosphere at a certain angle. That's why meteors, when they hit our atmosphere, they break up and they come down smaller than they were, because when our spacecraft come back in, they have to hit it at a certain angle and a certain speed. Otherwise, they're going to break up.
Ceramic planes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Roswell and all that. I have a personal, in my young life, kind of a Man in Black experience. My very close friend, it was kind of funny. My neighbors moved into the property next door to our farm when I was like 12. They was both in their 60s. They was both licensed architects from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Well, their son is a very famous individual. He was in the beginning, a United States Army in Korea that came out, became Secret Service, because come to find out that his uncle was ambassador to Korea. And that's when he got sent over to Korea, and the military came out. But make a long story short, he ended up becoming Secret Service. And he was the individual, everybody knows his name, I'm not going to say his name, but he's the individual that got shot when President Reagan got shot. Well, I met him later. And we was talking one day, and this was right around Desert Storm. And I was always getting ready to go to the military and stuff like that. He passed away before I actually went to the military, but he was one of the ones that helped train. Long story, I'm not going to get into it, but my family literally trained me to get ready for the military, because every male in our family goes to the military. But I asked him, I said, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this without sounding facetious. I said, with you working and living in, he was stationed at Alamogordo quite a bit. And I asked him, I said, with you working out there, have you ever seen a UFO? And his exact words, it says, I've seen things man-made and not man-made lots of times. And I said, well, let me ask you this. Are they real? He said, they're as real as you and I are. And I trust this guy with my life. He said, they are real as you and I are. And there are people on this planet that wants to keep them quiet. And I never ascertained that to be the Men in Black until we started doing research on Men in Black. But I guarantee you that's what he was talking about. And this guy was high level. I know he was level 4. We'll get to that in a little bit when
we
he
show
was
it.
actually worked as a nuclear 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 The missiles.
Silos.
Silos. He worked in the silos.
You know, another thing to put us down the rabbit hole a little bit. What if
Oh,
some of these individuals are just, for the sake of argument, like a human alien hybrid?
Well, we was talking about that, and that's another part
Yeah.
of the rabbit hole that we're going to go down.
that's another section over that way.
Exactly.
And here's another thing. I guess we could discuss this at another time, because this is going to be more than a part one. It's going to be a part 2 or 3. But to discuss this one particular thing is, what happens if, since the 1940s, we have our higher ups, rather not us regular citizens. What happens if our government has been in contact with these aliens? And what happens if the aliens and our government have made a deal between them?
Yeah.
You know, what happens? What if? There's the other
That's
going
another
that way
03
now.
shows there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it would be incumbent upon them to keep this secret. Here, we're going to give you this super alien technology, United States, and we want you to give us this. We want to be able to take some of your animals and some of your people, and we'll give you lists of people that we take, and we may or may not return them, but we're doing this for our knowledge, and we need certain minerals, and we need this and that. We need certain salts out of your oceans, and the Arctic is the best place to do it. There's another rabbit hole, guys. The Arctic.
I was just fixing to mention that.
So we need this, and that's our deal. But we'll keep in touch with you. However, over the years, I think they got a little itchy and scratchy over there and took more people than they were supposed to take. At least that's what my research shows, that a lot more people are missing than according to certain government officials.
Let's look at something real bland and real. To me, is one of the most obnoxiously blatant. 1947 to now,
Right?
Our technology has jumped leaps and bounds compared to all the time before. In 50 years, we covered over 5 centuries of scientific advancement. Literally 3 centuries before that, we was in the freaking Iron Age, in Bronze Age. And then in 50 years, we have got the man to the moon. We got all these right here. In 50 years.
That's a computer.
It is.
That little thing you got is a computer now,
Literally,
right?
Yeah. This thing right here, the first computer that used to run and matter of fact, they're still using it. The some of the silo stuff is still using the click cards because they
Univac.
Take up a whole room. And
big room,
and it wouldn't do half of a third of or a 16th what this will do.
Didn't have the computing power. Nope.
My deal with this whole thing is, what was the catalyst? I think it's awful funny that 5 years after Roswell, somebody ought to, look here, we got NASA. What made us decide to all of a sudden go to space? Well, you wonder why, because how are we going to get the technology up there? Microwave, satellite radio, lasers. Where did all this stuff come from? It had to be a catalyst somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Think about this too. Go back thousands of years.
Yeah.
The pyramids. Okay.
Yes.
The Sphinx. Over in Egypt, you got the pyramids and the Sphinx. Now let's go to South America. The Incas, the Mayas, they have their temples similar to the pyramids.
The Aztecs, Sumerians.
Yeah, how the heck did they get those big blocks all the way up there when in this day and age, we have one hell of a time trying to build the World Trade Center?
Japan tried to recreate it, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and they couldn't do it.
No.
Couldn't do it.
Come
pull it
on.
off.
Where
thousands of years ago, before BC, they were able to put this thing together.
You're going down another rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, that's
but it's all intertwined.
Now,
it is.
Now, also, I'm trying to think. Let's go back 1,000 years from now.
Yeah.
Over in the Middle East, they have etched into the walls, you know, how they did their carvings, pictures of flying saucers over pictures of their buildings. Yeah. Where did that come from, guys? This is 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
They dated these things already.
Mhm.
These are 1,000 years old. So pyramids, pictures, the whatnot. How did this happen? You know, these are questions. These are strange questions. And I don't know. We got to leave that for another show, but I'll tell you what, let's get into a story that was told to the History Channel. A man named Dahl, Dahl, he and his son and their little dog were in his boat. They were out in the ocean. And this was on June 1947. So it was a month before Roswell, guys. They're out in his boat. They're a couple miles offshore. And overhead comes 4 flying saucers. Low, pretty low, about 100 feet above their head. The father and the son are looking up. Now, the son's I think he's about 12 years old. They're looking up at this, and one of the flying saucers gets set on fire, and it starts to go sideways and crashes down into the water with such velocity that parts of it flew off, went into the man's boat, hit his kid in the arm and wounded him. Some of the metal pieces hit his dog and killed the dog. So I don't know if you guys got that, you know, in the research.
I've heard that before.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Well, he was visited by the men in black a day later, and he was told to his face, "You are not to talk about what you saw." And here's the poor guy. He's got damage to his boat. His son has his left arm injured. His dog is dead. Scared the heck out of everybody. He knows what he saw. I mean, these are your typical flying saucers, you know, saucer shape, lights on the bottom, a short half dome on top, and one of them goes and explodes right there into the water. And this man was told, "You will not talk about anything." And they implied a threat with that too. So, I mean,
I got that right here too, Nick. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the stories.
Harold Dahl, right?
Yeah, Dahl.
Yep.
The stories go on and on and on. And
then it mentions Bender.
Well, I think you hit a real good point. You know, every ancient culture on the planet talks about UFOs, including the
sky people,
including
North America, South America, Asia.
Oh. Where did Paul go? Or is it Paul or Peter? Went to the 7th heaven?
Yeah.
Was it who was the one that went away on a flaming chariot? In the Old Testament.
Was it Gabriel?
No, it wasn't Gabriel. Gabriel's alien.
Jeremiah. Enoch?
No, Enoch did too, but I'm talking about in the Bible. I think it was Jeremiah or somebody like that. It was one of the ones. But my whole deal is throughout history it is, and that would also I hate to say it, that gives me more credence that some of these men in black might be alien.
That's what I'm saying. It may have started out as U.S. Air Force men.
Yeah.
And then it was taken over by the CIA. Well, maybe those guys were the men in black.
But even before that, where he was talking in Europe, 200 years
we
didn't have Air Force and government.
No. That's where the supernatural aspect comes of it. Now, was it really supernatural or were they alien?
That's,
with powers, and the powers make them seem like they're demons. So what's going on here, guys? What's going on? But there's so many rabbit holes to go. Like I said, this way down there, and we got to. Gary, can you put up that?
Yes, for sure. I got it ready right here.
Our United States government security clearance organizational chart. Now, folks, this was originally redacted, and then years later it came back out
through the national. I can't even think of the name of it now.
But it did come back out, and they finally let it show. Now you'll see that. Let's start at the bottom. It starts out at restricted.
Yep.
And then generally most government people that work with sensitive materials, they'll be under confidential and secret.
Yep.
And then as you go up the chain of command, you'll go to top secret.
Yep.
Now I know I've had an SCI clearance, but the USAP, no. Now you'll notice that there's numbers 1 through 28. That's a top secret crypto. So you go up the line, those are different people that have those top secret crypto clearances. Yeah. I'm going to go all the way up. Now, the next one is 10 levels. You know, it starts out as Orbit and it goes up to Majestic. Now, that group we spoke about in the beginning, the Majestic 12, those are the top group. That is the top group, Majestic. Now, those 10 levels were organizations. What they do, what they did, if they're still around, we don't know. I don't care how much research I do. I can't tell you about them. Let's go back down to the numbered ones, the 1 through 28. You'll notice number 17, President of the United States.
Just 17.
He has clearance up to number 17. Well, gee, who's got clearance from 18 all the way up to Majestic? The president doesn't have anything beyond that. He's got the box, the football with the nuclear codes. He could let missiles fly all over the place. Yet he's not allowed past 18. I mean, what do you think about that, guys?
What out there is more top secret than having security codes to launch nuclear weapons?
Yeah. What
he doesn't have access to.
I mean, he's cleared for nuclear launch codes, yet he can't get information in 18, 19, and 20.
Exactly.
I'd really like to know who is there, who's represented in these other numbers, 18 to 28.
Me too.
That 2D27, if you try to look that up, it's going to give you a blank. You know, that's under orbit, triad and orbit.
It came up as a carburetor part number on my screen.
That's about it. It blanked out on mine a few times. But the numbers are top secret crypto codes.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I was thinking about as we was discussing stuff earlier, we always talk about, you was tier 1, I was tier 2, and I had the top secret. I wonder if maybe these numbers here might kind of overlap with these down here, because I did have the SCI. I don't recall. I'm pretty sure I probably had the USAP, but I probably don't remember it because it was in the deal. But the point that I was getting at is how funny. Do you know when this was released, Nick?
That was released in the early 2000s. I don't have a date on it. It did not give me a date.
The reason I'm saying that is a lot of the guys with the if you ever watched a lot of the alien guys, the Space Force stuff, that talk about the Space Force, right, that supposedly did the rotation in the Space Force, and they talk a lot about this, the triad, the astral, the stellar, ultra, cosmic, and the majestic. I've never heard about anything here in the military. I did know that the president was level 17. Well,
it's funny. Here's a true story. You guys can look it up on the internet. Anybody can. Back when he was president, President Carter wanted to know more about the aliens. They wouldn't give it to him. Can you imagine? I mean, he insisted they would not give it to him. Spring forward, guess which other president really pushed it and wanted to know?
Clinton.
Yes, sir.
Who?
Yes, sir.
Clinton.
Yeah.
Clinton really wanted to know. The two presidents with the C, Carter and Clinton. Now, Clinton really pushed it. I mean, he went to Congress. He went to the Senate. He says, this is crazy. I'm the president of the United States. I want to be read in on this. He was absolutely denied, guys. You ever see that movie National Treasure?
Yes.
Well, yeah. They were really if you read the interviews by the producers and the writer of that, they were actually spoken to by not so much MIBs, but people in the government, not to actually put out more, what they were going to put out, because evidently somebody did a deep dive into information and they wanted to make it as close to factual as possible. And that's where they're getting into that, I don't want to say gray zone, that black zone, that dark zone where, no, you're not going to cross this line.
Yeah.
But Clinton really pushed it, guys. And you know what? They refused them. They refused them not once, twice, three. They refused them 4 times from what I researched. He really tried to get it. He goes, I'm the president of the United States. Come on. I've got the football over here. If I want to play,
deal with this is, like you said, who is in this position? Who do they answer to? They don't answer. If you don't answer to the president of the United States, who do you answer to?
Nobody.
I mean, the president of the United States can tell the NSA, I want you to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
CIA, I want you to do this, and they're going to do it.
Does the words deep state come to mind in this?
Oh, yeah.
But it's not I truly believe, and I'm going to say this, I'm not going to get too deep into it because it'll be another 3 shows. I truly believe that it is not a American thing. It's not a
international is what you're talking.
It's an international thing.
The Pope's involved. Everybody's involved in this thing. So
don't get my wife going on that.
Oh yeah.
Bring her in here. Bring her in. Come on. We want to hear what she has to say. Don't you, Gary? I want to see what she wants to say.
I've had these conversations with her for hours upon hours. She has literally kept me up all night long.
Gary's known Stacy just as long. Gary knew Stacy 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
But my deal with this, and it's so funny. If you look at this, it's really not that hard to fathom that you have more Men in Black incidents with UFOs, and I'm just saying, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. You have more Men in Black incidents with UFOs and dogmen than you do with Bigfoot.
Right.
Yes.
I honestly believe that Bigfoot is a natural creature to this planet. I think dogmen might be exactly what a certain individual has said more than once, or a lot of people have said, might be a genetic manipulated either by a government agency or by, say, aliens or something. We've
had reports of Bigfoot way before reports of
dogmen.
I'm not going to say dogmen. Werewolves.
Well, yeah, true.
Okay.
All right. Werewolves came first, and then dogman second. Werewolf is a smaller version of a dogman.
Yeah.
However, if you really track it all back, Bigfoot was first.
Yeah.
He was there. You're true. I mean, here we go. Another hole going that way.
Well, also in saying that too, why would you want to cover up? They don't try to really cover up Bigfoot.
Mm-mm.
Why would you want to cover up dogmen? Well, if it's a genetically manipulated thing, but the earliest account that I know of dogmen is being Buddhist. We, study a lot of the Hindu. There was a certain race of dog men that were great warriors in ancient Hindu up to 3000 BC.
Right.
Traded with, that's the earliest, but their descriptions is not like what we're getting into now.
A little bit different. Yeah.
And Nick, you're one of the few, and once again, I don't want to offend anybody when I say this, but I have to say it. I'm a 100% transparency anymore with my personal research and career in this, not career because they don't pay nothing, but professionalism. Yeah. Your eyewitness account is creditable to me. Text from Trinity Paracryptid is creditable to me. There's a guy named Wiley that used to be with the Cryptid Brothers. I know it's credible because I know the guy. Y'all's descriptions are consistent, and it's not too woohoo. But once again, there's always, when you have that general and that type of appearance, there's always either a man in black involved or crazy lights, just like the situation in Arkansas, Nick, where I seen the lights too, and you had a team go in. Why? That's another
hole.
Unexplainable.
Here's
Totally
my
unexplainable.
fact. My whole point. We know certain animals can crossbreed. We have ligers. We have polar bears mixing with black bears.
Roller bears. Yeah.
Yes, we have
Brown
certain
bears.
monkeys that interbreed with each other. We have mules. We have horses. We have, but they're close to the same species. Hogs.
Right.
We discussed hogs the first episode.
Oh man.
And here's my deal: a man and a dog cannot genetically meld. Sorry, if that was the case, that is goes against the law of nature. And I'm not going to say God's law, or I'm going to leave God out of it. Just biologically, the law of nature, it can't happen. So it has to have some kind of. I'm not knocking that they're not there, because I know too many of you guys that have seen them. Where, how, why?
And I've tried to disprove it. I went back the
Yeah.
very next day with a full-blown team,
Yeah.
full kitted up team. And I was like, guys, I know exactly what I saw. But
Not
But
only
here's-
that, you went back with a scientific mentality, an analytical. You went back with a law enforcement mentality. You didn't go back just to observe. You went back. How would I say, with the proper procedures? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
we tried. Yeah. But what I was going to say is, just this past March, we went up there. I'm saying, actually, it's down there. We went back to North Carolina. We were in North Carolina in January. We went back in March because of some reports. The first time we were there, we found out that it was an oddly shaped bear.
yeah,
Abnormally large body, abnormally large snout. Okay, we proved it wasn't a dog man. We got another call back in late February. We got there February 29th, and we stayed there a few days. There was only 4 of us, so we had 2 teams of 2. My A team, who went to the left, and we went to the right of this field. We each had about a mile to cover. My A team actually saw a dog man crossing the area, the exact area where the people that reported it. These were 2 guys apart from myself that were on the same team back in 2013 when I first had my encounter. They reported seeing a dog man, a bipedal wolf-like creature, 7 feet tall, crossing a roadway. They called us on the radio. We had about 30 pounds of equipment on us. We ran full out. We didn't see it. It was gone. All right. The next day we went back about the same time. A couple hours goes by. This time we're about a half a mile away from each other instead of over a mile. And they called back. It's back again. And they're describing it. And one guy was going to take a shot at it, for crying out loud. I told him, don't do it. Don't do it. If you possibly miss, that bullet's going to travel. It's a 308, Gary.
yeah.
It's going to travel, and you don't want to hit somebody, out of this park area. And they saw it 2 days in a row. These are 2 people separate from myself. And it was a very similar description that I had. So, I mean, they are out there. And, what you said, I mean, it's a canine variant 3 description for anybody that wants to look that up out there. I don't know. Rabbit holes going all over the place, up, down, left, right, inside, the middle. We spoke about so many things here. We spoke about, the security clearance. What does this have to do with what we're talking about? Well, if the president of the United States can't get information on aliens at security level 17, we sure as heck are not going to be able to get it unless we somehow stumble upon it.
We are talking
Exactly.
about the literal, supposedly most powerful man on the planet.
The absolute planet.
It's an eye opener.
Yeah.
Being told no.
Let
You
me.
can't have it.
I know y'all are. I think we're about ready to shut her down. But I'm gonna throw something else, because I'd really like to do a part 2 and a part 3 on this.
Yeah, we're gonna.
And for the simple fact, I'm gonna say another Men in Black incident that really tied in. Y'all mentioned it earlier. Operation High Jump.
Uh-huh.
Multiple
Okay.
times of Men in Black. Antarctica.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Lieutenant Colonel Byrd.
Admiral Byrd.
Admiral Byrd. Sorry.
Yep.
Flat out in his book and talked
Mhm.
about multiple times when he come home of Men in Black coming, and he's like, "Do y'all understand who I am? I'm a decorated admiral." They like, "We don't care." Do you really know
Nope.
who we are? No, you don't, and that's a good thing, you know.
Because he was talking about what he saw in Antarctica in that Crystal City, supposedly,
Yeah.
with those.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
flying objects and the
Yep.
and let me throw something else at you. In the past 10 years, do you understand how many highfalutin officials, President Obama, President
Mhm.
Trump, the Pope, all three of the last popes, prime ministers, Prime Minister of Canada, they all go to Antarctica. But
Yep.
they went to Antarctica, but they don't talk about nothing in Antarctica
Yep.
when they come out. Well, why don't you talk about it? You know, Antarctica has the largest no-fly zone in the United States, and it's not controlled by any one country. It's controlled by 7 different countries.
Mhm.
And what's funny is 3 of the countries are almost at war right now, but they all agree on one thing. Nobody's supposed to go flying over Antarctica.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. And listen, how solid is that ice up there? And how hard would it be to build a underground, let's say, bunker area under there?
Yeah.
Well, for humans, it would be nigh impossible. Okay. For an alien race that has possibly built pyramids and temples and the like, in South America, for them people, it's for those beings, I'm correcting myself here because I misspoke. For those beings, it's probably a snap.
Yeah.
So what are these high-end people, let's call them, who are high on this chart here? Okay.
Wait, here, let me put it back up. Sorry.
That's okay. You can leave it off. Well, because we are at the end of our filming time. So we're going to have to do a part 2 on this. And guys, I got to tell everybody that we did not corroborate on this information.
At all.
We came beforehand. We just came into this interview today, just flat out, not speaking to each other, just drawing from our own notes.
And I want to say something to that. I would really like to keep that format.
Me too.
Because it keeps it so spontaneous.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we talk a little bit, folks, but we're all busy men. And
we haven't discussed this. And I mean, when I picked this up here, this is like one of 3 books that I've had doing research. I mean, because I started out in the paranormal, I went to UFOlogy, and then from there I went to cryptozoology, and then in these days zoology also. But I mean, I have several of these books full of stuff in reference to MIBs, aliens, and the like when I was doing the UFO stuff, and I just reached back on them and did research from today too. And Rabbitt Hole is bottomless.
Let me throw one more thing at you. You hit something a while ago that I do a lot of research myself on Antarctica. Do you know what the temperature for general cryogenic stasis is?
Not offhand.
-30 Celsius to -320 Fahrenheit, which is 196. We have consistent temperatures in the center, not underneath the ice, on top of the ice, in the center of Antarctica of consistent -20 to 25. So if you get underneath the ice, here's my point. They talk about DNA and all this, that, and the other. And if we all know that all the continents used to be connected, and they split apart. So we also know, and we could do a show on that. You talk about a cryptid. We have literally were within 5 years of resurrecting the mammoth in Siberia.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to grow one.
Yep.
And here's my point. We don't know all the legends of the past, the cryptids, giants, dogmen, Bigfoot, angels, Nephilim, whatever you want to call them. What if they're not cryogenically? Maybe. Now, what year did Byrd go to Antarctica?
God, I think it was in the 40s, in the 30s. Or was
Let
it
me look it
before
up.
that?
It's late 40s and early 50s.
Okay.
It's all tied in.
Yeah.
I know we need to shut this thing down. HIGAN. Nick, could you repeat the date of Roswell, please?
Okay, we have the New Mexico, Roswell,
Yeah.
New Mexico, right? That was July 1947.
Operation High Jump, August
Right.
of 1946.
Yeah.
Now,
Before Roswell.
right before Roswell, but here's the deal. We have within 6 months of before and ended in late February of 1947. I'm just saying, we literally have an admiral coming out talking about UFOs, a decorated wartime admiral,
Yeah.
World War II, Purple Heart Congressional Medal of Honor winner. Talk about integrity.
Yeah.
Coming out talking about UFOs in Antarctica. And then we all of a sudden have something crash in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole series of shows right there.
Yeah.
And remember Mr. Dahl and his son in the
Absolutely.
water. We
Absolutely.
had 4 UFOs and one crashed in the water. I mean,
There's a list of them.
There is.
There is a list. Like I said, it wasn't enough for one show. We couldn't do it.
I love how Nick, we was having a conversation. I think it's been about a year ago, and it's real weird. I can't remember something happened yesterday, but I can remember conversations from Nick said something a long time ago when we first started the roundtable, and said we would be awful arrogant to think we're the only ones here.
Oh yeah, that's the God's honest truth. I mean, look at us here, and look at the trillions, if not zillions, of planets out there.
Mm-hmm.
How arrogant could we be to think that there is nothing else out there?
Nothing else. Yeah.
We are it. I don't think so, people. I don't want to scare anybody, and I want you all to get good sleep. And I'm not talking about you, Gary, or you, Jay. I know I'm going to sleep like a bunny, but I'm going to tell you, it would be awfully arrogant of us to think no. I mean, because these people that are out there, no, absolutely not. There are no such thing as aliens. Well, yeah, there are.
Who's to say we aren't the aliens on this planet?
Yeah.
If you're a Christian, I'm just going to say this and I'm going to shut up. If you're a Christian, you can't not say that, because the true definition of an alien is something not of this world. And in the Bible, in the creation story, God came from where? From the heavens.
From the heavens.
Created man in his own image, using the sands of the earth. Now, in a little bit later, what are we talking about? The sands of the earth? You will have children as of the sands of the earth. But God created us an asterical being. Y'all done got me started. I truly believe myself that Bigfoot has been here all along. He's more natural to this planet than we are.
I think so too.
That's a whole nother show.
If you look at pictures of recreations of what Neanderthal man looked like, Cro-Magnon man, he sure does look like Bigfoot.
Similar, yeah.
You know, very, very similar. And I mean, he didn't have manscaping products, so he wasn't about to shave the hair off his body.
Another thing too, the bone structure of Neanderthal man is 3 times as dense as the human.
Is the human? Yeah.
Their strength was uncanny.
Oh, yeah.
Their skeletal system is closer to that of a gorilla than it is of us.
Yes.
Right.
The way they walk was totally different than us.
Yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen,
sorry, we can keep going forever.
We could do this for a long time. Like we said, it could be. We're gonna have to decide, guys. Jay, Gary, we're gonna have to decide if we're gonna do a part 2, 3, or whatever on this. And we're gonna have to pick ways to go on it too.
Well, what say we do a part 2, but we don't do it next week? Say we do another show next week, and that'll get, because this is the kind of thing we really need to research and put.
I know, because if we're gonna go further into one of those little holes, you know, we're gonna have to, you know, really do it up. So I'll tell you what, guys, we'll announce next week's Cryptid will be the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
I was just gonna say that.
The Fresno night crawlers.
Fresno night
Fresno
crawlers.
crawlers, yeah.
Is that tied in with the doctor that was got pulled over and carrying the 44?
No, that
No.
surgeon was carrying the 44 mag. He got pulled over in California. He was a very famous plastic surgeon. He had Bigfoot in his backyard.
Yeah, he called him a Zuby or something like that.
Yeah, but that's what they call them, but those are actually Bigfoot.
Well, when you
But,
said Fresno, I was thinking Fresno, California.
Right. That's what we're talking about. The Fresno.
Is that the little white things that?
Yeah, they have legs.
Really? Okay.
Little heads.
Yeah. So, folks, I've just now heard that. So now I got to go do. That's what I love about this. You throw it at us, and we got to go do research on it. This is freaking.
Oh, wait for the next week's one. I'm telling you, but yeah, the MIBs to be continued.
Yeah.
To BC, the MIBs. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Yes,
it's been great.
Thanks everyone for tuning in once again, and we will see you next week with the Fresno Crawler. And then we'll hit our second MIB episode the week after.
Wait, same bat channel, same bat play, or how does that go? Same bat,
same bat channel, same bat time,
or something like that.
Something like that.
Good night, everybody.
All right, guys, have a good night.